Are you tired of trans voice tutorials that require either a linguistics degree or a sound engineering degree to even understand it? Would you like a tutorial so simple that even 5-year-olds could understand it?
Well, here it is. Change the voice from this
to this. How to trans voice whatever part we're up to. Vocal weight. This one was a long time coming. So regulars of the channel might be wondering, why did it take so long to make a tutorial about vocal weight exactly? Well, when I was voice training myself, and I watched all the other vocal weight videos, I'll be honest, I just didn't get it. For this tutorial, I'll be using this chart that I prepared in advance to explain what vocal weight is. We're gonna have voice examples of what each part of it sounds like, but the only vocabulary you need to understand in order to do this is to know the difference between brightness versus darkness, and thick versus thin, right? So, our goal is to achieve bright and thin qualities in our voice. If you already know how to raise your larynx and do a bright resonance, you already can do the bright part. Vocal weight is more focused on the thick versus thin, but explaining what the difference between those are is a bit difficult. So, let's meet some characters that have some voices very similar to the extremes of both so that we can understand the difference. Let's go.
So how's that gorilla breathing underwater anyway?
Oh, same way we are.
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay, I've invited SpongeBob and Patrick, my best friends in the world, to help demonstrate the different types of voices that fall in this vocal weight chart here. For example, my voice would sit in thin and bright, right? That's what we're going for by the end of this tutorial. However, let's look at Backseater's voice, SpongeBob's voice, and Patrick's voice to see the different extremes other than my voice on this graph here.
I'm ready!
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
Is mayonnaise an instrument?
Is mayonnaise an instrument? Who wrote this? Is mayonnaise an instrument? Is mayonnaise an instrument?
Is mayonnaise an instrument? Is mayonnaise an instrument? So those 4 voices were the 4 extremes of this vocal weight graph here. That will hopefully help demonstrate the rough difference of how it sounds, right? So let's have a little play around to get a feel for it so we can identify those differences in isolation so that we can then get a thin and bright voice later. Sound good? Cool. Let's start with a stereotypical mask voice, okay?
Like a voice kind of here, right? Something along these lines. You'll notice that it sounds gravelly and dark, right? Those are distinct qualities of something being dark, but also thick, right? That, thickness, right? Now, let's try to do a Patrick Star impression. It doesn't have to be perfect. Heck, it doesn't actually have to be good, right? You just have to get that general quality, okay? You want to have, like, that attempt to try to make it sound very, that kind of sound, right? If you have trouble doing this voice, try pretending you're yawning because you're really bored. Imagine someone's explaining something like taxes or something. Just, that's so boring, oh my god. If that also doesn't work, if you also do a bad moist critical impression, that is roughly the same voice.
Hey guys, what's up? Shadow does taxes here. Today.
We're going to be making a ah sound in between each of the extremes on our little graph here, okay? So, what that'll sound like, for example, is me going, You can either blend the sounds together or do them as 3 separate sounds, right? You could either go, like that, right? Now, bear in mind, when you're doing the dark, thin voice, your larynx is still gonna be down. That's because once you hit the dark, thin, the only thing you have to change is your larynx. It's quite literally doing a Patrick Star voice and then raising both your pitch and your larynx at the same time, and you'll probably get the desired result.
This voice here would be an example of a dark and thick, right? Larynx is down, it's really gravelly, and, well, it doesn't sound very bright, right? Whereas this is a dark, thin voice. It's thinned out. That's because you can't hear the kind of right, we were moving the and turning it into a yawn. That's the sound we want, okay?
And then from there, all it is literally raising my pitch and larynx. Honestly, doing the thick, bright voice, the SpongeBob one, is a little uncomfortable. It's just this kind of kind of sound, right? Because if you do like the it almost sounds like a bad SpongeBob impression, right? The more techniques you learn and bring it together, the better it will sound. It's like building a little castle. If you had the little pieces, it might not sound perfect. But you might be wondering what it sounds like when someone learning is doing vocal weight, right? Well, here's an audio example from one of my students from Patreon.
When the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air, they act as a prism and form a rainbow.
When the sunlight strikes raindrops in the air, they act as a prism and form a rainbow.
So that recording was from someone's second lesson doing vocal weight, and I think they did a really wonderful job. So you might be wondering, random voice coach YouTube of a cool Patreon linked in the description below. How do I turn this into a real person voice? I'm glad you asked. Let's grab this jetpack underwater, go to the surface, and let's practice this technique with sentences. Let's go.
Wait, how did she use a jetpack underwater? Pitch? How did... Guess I'm walking underwater.
Got water in the microphone again. Good thing it's just a prop. Anyway, let's try what we just learnt, but let's apply sentences. This way we can learn to use vocal weight practically, right? Similar to how we did this whole sound earlier. This time we are gonna do that with a sentence, all right? So let's go from dark thick to dark thin, finally to bright thin. This will sound like
Milkshakes are tasty.
milkshakes are tasty. Milkshakes are tasty. Just like that, right? Similar to the mayonnaise as an instrument part earlier in the video. You can try any sentence you'd like. There's no real requirement for what makes a good sentence for this technique, unlike some other techniques that we do. So just pick any sentence that feels comfortable and perhaps even fun. Try practicing this like a couple of times a day for just a couple of minutes. You don't have to sit there in front of a brick wall for an hour. That'd be really boring. Instead, space it out for your day and build the habit. The idea of this is so that when you get really good at swapping from each section of this graph here, you'll be able to do it on command. So what they'll build up to is, for example, I could go, oh, do dark thin, which is that part of the graph. And you could then go, milkshakes are tasty. You could lock into that, right? However, if I said to do bright and thin, you can think back to the extremes. You can go from like that, and you'll get really close to like a bright and thin voice. And the more you do that, the quicker you'll be able to jump up to that section. Eventually, you can just jump straight there. So if I went, do a bright thin voice, you could then go, milkshakes are tasty, right? It won't happen immediately. It'll probably take a few weeks, and that's fine. Now within this tutorial, I reference the terms larynx and resonance, right? If you don't know what those are, I have videos about that, and that can help build a foundation to make this technique sound even better, right? I recommend doing like larynx, resonance, then vocal weight, but you can kind of do vocal weight in the middle if you'd prefer. It's really just personal preference, but I do recommend doing larynx first. I'm sure at least one professional swimmer has had to have a lifeguard go get them, you know what I mean? So if you don't get it straight away, that's fine and not a negative reflection of your transition, okay? Voice training is very vulnerable, so give yourself grace and kindness and give it your all. If you have any questions about the techniques in this video, please leave a comment and I'll happily answer anything I can, even on the older videos. That includes the videos from like 2 years ago now. I still look at the comments of all the voice tutorials, so if you have questions, just go for it, okay? If you want to see more from me, hit the funny subscribe button and don't forget to ring the funny bell. People don't really say that anymore, but I kind of disappear in people's recommended, so you might as well hit the bell, otherwise I might not pop up again. So, if you want to see weekly videos from me, that's right, weekly, in both VR me and IRL me, you won't want to miss subscribing. Also, I do live streams every single week at this time, either video games or dancing, so if that interests you at all, feel free to check that out, and leave a nice comment if you would like. Did I miss something? Oh yeah, like the video. That's important too. Share with your friends. That also really helps. I think that's all the self-indulgent YouTube promotion stuff. Yeah, I think we're good. All right, stay hydrated and know that you are valid. I'll see you next week. Ow. I'm okay.